Shortened easy green version. Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Cinderella. She lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters who were very mean to her. They made her do all the housework, like making beds and cleaning the floors. Cinderella did all of this work without complaining. She was a kind and lovely girl. Her stepsisters were not nice at all and were jealous of her. Cinderella didn't even have a proper bed to sleep in. She had to sleep by the fireplace, which was covered in ashes. That's why they called her Cinderella. One day, a messenger came to their house with an invitation to a fancy ball at the palace, hosted by the prince. Cinderella's stepsisters were excited and told her to get their fancy dresses ready. They said, "All the handsome young men in the kingdom will be there, and we must look our best." Cinderella wanted to go to the ball too, so she asked, "Can I please come to the ball?" Her stepmother scolded her and said, "You can't go to the ball. You have to help your sisters get ready." Most people would have said no, but Cinderella was so kind-hearted that she agreed to help. On the night of the ball, she ran around helping her stepsisters get ready by ironing their dresses, brushing their hair, and polishing their shoes. When they were finally ready, they left for the ball without saying thank you or goodbye to Cinderella. She was left all alone by the fireplace, crying. "I wish I could have gone to the ball. I may not have fancy clothes, but I still would have loved to go." Suddenly, a kind voice said, "I am your fairy godmother. Don't cry, you will go to the ball. Just do as I say." Cinderella looked at the old lady who had appeared out of nowhere and said, "You're my very own fairy godmother. I will do as you say." Her fairy godmother told her to get a pumpkin from the garden. She touched it with her magic wand, and it turned into a beautiful carriage. Then, she asked Cinderella to bring a mousetrap with 6 white mice in it. The fairy godmother used her magic to turn 4 of the mice into horses and the other 2 into footmen. "Now, Cinderella, you can go to the ball," said her fairy godmother. "But how can I go in these old clothes?" Cinderella asked sadly. Her fairy godmother waved her wand, and Cinderella's rags turned into a beautiful princess gown. She even had delicate glass slippers on her feet. "Now, go and enjoy yourself, but remember to leave before midnight or your beautiful clothes will turn back into rags," her fairy godmother warned. "I promise I will," Cinderella said as she went to the ball. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, everyone admired her beauty. The prince couldn't stop looking at her and danced with her all night. Cinderella was so happy that she forgot the time. When the clock struck midnight, she had to leave. "Goodbye, Your Highness. I have to go," she said, and she ran away. She didn't notice that she left one glass slipper behind. The prince tried to find her, and he sent messengers to try the glass slipper on every girl in the land. When they came to Cinderella's house, her stepsisters tried the slipper, but it didn't fit. "Let her try it," the messenger said to Cinderella. "It won't fit," one stepsister said. And she wasn't at the ball. To their surprise, the glass slipper fit Cinderella perfectly. Her fairy godmother appeared again and made her look beautiful. The messengers took her to the palace, and the prince was overjoyed to see her. They got married, and everyone came to their wedding, including Cinderella's stepsisters, whom she forgave for being mean to her.
Cinderella and the Glass Slipper. Shortened easy yellow version. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a young girl named Cinderella. She was known far and wide for her kindness and her gentle nature. However, her life was not as easy as it seemed. Cinderella lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters in a small house. While Cinderella was kind and sweet, her stepsisters were quite the opposite. They were mean and selfish and often made Cinderella's life very difficult. Every day, Cinderella was given all the housework to do. She had to clean the floors, wash the dishes, and make the beds. Despite the hard work, Cinderella never complained. She believed in being kind and patient, no matter the circumstances. One of the reasons her stepsisters were so unkind to Cinderella was that she was very beautiful. They were jealous of her beauty and would often tease her for it. They would say hurtful things and make fun of her. Cinderella didn't even have a proper bed to sleep in. Her stepsisters had comfortable beds, but Cinderella had to sleep by the fireplace. She would curl up on a cold, hard floor covered in ashes. It was a difficult life for her, but she never lost her gentle spirit. One day, something exciting happened in the kingdom. A messenger arrived at Cinderella's house with a beautiful invitation. It was an invitation to a grand ball at the royal palace, and it was hosted by none other than the prince himself. Cinderella's stepsisters were overjoyed when they heard the news. They immediately started planning for the ball and asked Cinderella to help them get ready. They said, "All the handsome young men in the kingdom will be at the ball, and we must look our best." Cinderella, with her kind heart, wanted to go to the ball as well. She gathered the courage to ask, "Can I please come to the ball?" Her stepsisters, however, scolded her and said, "You can't go to the ball. You have to help us get ready." Most people would have been very sad and disappointed, but not Cinderella. She agreed to help her stepsisters prepare for the ball, even though it meant more work for her. On the night of the ball, Cinderella worked tirelessly to help her stepsisters. She ironed their beautiful dresses, brushed their hair until it gleamed, and helped them find their matching shoes. Her stepsisters were in a hurry to leave for the ball and didn't even say thank you to Cinderella. Left all alone by the fireplace, Cinderella couldn't help but feel a little sad. She looked at her ragged clothes and sighed, "I wish I could have gone to the ball. I may not have fancy clothes, but I still would have loved to go." Suddenly, there was a soft and kind voice that spoke to her. "I am your fairy godmother," said the voice. "Don't cry, you will go to the ball. Just do as I say." Cinderella looked around in surprise and saw an elderly lady she had never seen before. The lady had a warm and kind smile, and Cinderella felt a sense of comfort. She said, "You're my very own fairy godmother. I will do as you say." Cinderella's fairy godmother instructed her to get a pumpkin from the garden. When Cinderella brought the pumpkin, her fairy godmother touched it with her magic wand. In an instant, the pumpkin transformed into a magnificent carriage. Next, her fairy godmother asked Cinderella to find a mousetrap with 6 white mice in it. Cinderella brought the mousetrap, and her fairy godmother used her magic to turn 4 of the mice into elegant white horses. The remaining 2 mice became the carriage's footmen. "Now, Cinderella, you can go to the ball," her fairy godmother said with a smile. Cinderella was overjoyed but worried about her attire. She asked, "But how can I go in these old clothes?" Her fairy godmother waved her wand once more, and Cinderella's rags transformed into a stunning princess gown. On her feet, she now had delicate glass slippers. "Now, my dear, Go and enjoy yourself, but remember to leave the ball before the stroke of midnight," her fairy godmother warned. "When the clock strikes midnight, your beautiful clothes will turn back into rags." Cinderella thanked her fairy godmother with all her heart and headed to the ball with a heart full of hope. When Cinderella arrived at the royal palace, everyone was mesmerized by her beauty. The prince himself couldn't take his eyes off her. He asked her to dance, and they twirled around the grand ballroom together. Cinderella was the happiest she had ever been. As they danced and talked, Cinderella lost track of time. She was having such a wonderful time that she didn't even notice the clock ticking. When the clock finally struck midnight, Cinderella remembered her fairy godmother's warning. In a hurry, she left the ball, but in her haste, she accidentally left behind one of her delicate glass slippers on the grand staircase. The prince tried to chase after her, but she vanished into the night. The next day, the prince was determined to find the beautiful girl from the ball. He had fallen in love with her, and he wanted to make her his bride. He sent his messengers all over the kingdom with one task, to find the owner of the glass slipper. The messengers arrived at Cinderella's house, and her stepsisters eagerly tried to squeeze their feet into the tiny glass slipper. But it was no use, the slipper was too small for them. Curious, the messenger asked Cinderella, "Why don't you try it on?" One of her stepsisters replied, "It won't fit her, and besides, she wasn't at the ball." To their astonishment, the glass slipper fit Cinderella perfectly. Her stepsisters were in disbelief. They had no idea that their kind and gentle stepsister was the mysterious beauty from the ball. Just as they were about to leave, Cinderella's fairy godmother appeared once more. With a wave of her wand, she made Cinderella look even more beautiful than before. The messengers took Cinderella to the royal palace. When the prince saw Cinderella, he was overjoyed. He knew he had found the girl he had been searching for. He asked her to marry him, and Cinderella happily agreed. Soon, a grand wedding was held at the royal palace. Cinderella's stepsisters, who had treated her so poorly, were invited to the wedding. Cinderella had forgiven them and wanted to share her happiness with them. As Cinderella and the prince exchanged their vows, there was a sense of true love and happiness in the air. Cinderella's kindness had led her to a life of love and happiness, and she had finally found her happily ever after. And so, Cinderella's story became known throughout the kingdom as a tale of kindness, courage, and the belief that goodness always triumphs in the end. She proved that no matter how difficult life may be, a kind heart can lead to a fairy tale ending.
Cinderella and the Little Glass Slipper. Short and easy purple version. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a kind and gentle girl named Cinderella. She was known for her goodness and her beautiful spirit, but she had a difficult life. After her mother passed away, her father remarried a woman who had 2 daughters of her own. Unfortunately, Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters were not kind-hearted like her. They were unkind and made Cinderella do all the chores in the house. Cinderella's days were filled with sweeping floors, washing dishes, and taking care of every task her stepmother and stepsisters assigned to her. Despite the hardships, Cinderella never complained. Cinderella lacked a proper bed for restful sleep, unlike her stepsisters who enjoyed comfortable beds. Instead, she found herself nestled by the fireplace, forced to curl up on a frigid and unyielding floor, often covered in ashes. Her life was undeniably challenging, yet her gentle spirit remained unwavering throughout. She found solace in the company of the little birds and animals that visited her. She would sing to them, and they would sing back, creating a sense of joy and friendship in her heart. One day, as Cinderella was working in the kitchen, a messenger arrived with an announcement that would change her life. The royal palace was hosting a grand ball, and every maiden in the kingdom was invited. The purpose of the ball was to find a bride for the handsome and kind-hearted prince. Cinderella's stepsisters were thrilled at the news. They immediately began planning their outfits and dreaming of meeting the prince. They demanded that Cinderella help them prepare for the ball. They wanted the most beautiful dresses, the shiniest jewelry, and the fanciest hairstyles. Cinderella, as always, agreed to help. With her sewing skills, Cinderella stitched the most exquisite gowns for her stepsisters, carefully adding delicate lace and sparkles to make them shine. She also styled their hair and helped them with their makeup. Her stepsisters were delighted with how beautiful they looked. As the day of the ball approached, Cinderella's stepsisters grew more excited. They couldn't stop talking about the handsome prince and the possibility of becoming a princess. But when Cinderella asked if she could go to the ball too, her stepmother was quick to dismiss her. "You, Cinderella," her stepmother scoffed. "You belong in the kitchen, not at a royal ball. Besides, you have nothing to wear, and your appearance is far from royal." Cinderella was heartbroken. She watched as her stepsisters got ready, their faces adorned with smiles, while she remained in her ragged clothes and apron. She retreated to the garden, feeling tears well up in her eyes. As Cinderella sat in the garden, a sudden shimmer of light caught her attention. To her surprise, her fairy godmother appeared before her. The fairy godmother was a beautiful and kind woman with a wand in her hand. "Why are you crying, my dear?" the fairy godmother asked gently. Cinderella explained her situation, how she longed to go to the ball but was forbidden by her stepmother. The fairy godmother smiled warmly and said, "Fear not, Cinderella, for I am here to help you. With a little magic, you shall go to the ball." With a wave of her wand, the fairy godmother transformed a pumpkin into a magnificent carriage, mice into elegant horses, and lizards into coachmen. Cinderella's rags were magically replaced with a stunning gown made of the finest silks, and on her feet were glass slippers that sparkled like diamonds. "Now, my dear, you may go to the ball," the fairy godmother said, "but remember, you must return before midnight. At the stroke of midnight, the magic will wear off, and everything will return to how it was." Cinderella was overjoyed and thanked her fairy godmother profusely. She climbed into the beautiful carriage, and with a clip-clop, she was on her way to the royal palace. When Cinderella arrived at the ball, she took everyone's breath away. The prince himself was mesmerized by her beauty and grace. He asked her to dance, and Cinderella felt as if she were floating on air. They danced together throughout the night, and Cinderella was the happiest she had ever been. However, as the clock neared midnight, Cinderella remembered her fairy godmother's warning. She knew she had to leave before the magic wore off. With a hasty farewell to the prince, she rushed out of the palace, leaving behind one of her glass slippers on the grand staircase. Back at home, Cinderella's stepsisters couldn't stop talking about the mysterious maiden who had captured the prince's heart. They had no idea it was their stepsister, Cinderella. The next day, the prince was determined to find the maiden who had captured his heart. He sent his messengers to every corner of the kingdom with a glass slipper, hoping to find the one whose foot it would perfectly fit. When the messengers arrived at Cinderella's house, her stepsisters tried their best to squeeze their feet into the delicate slipper, but it was of no use. The glass slipper was too small for them. Cinderella's heart raced as she watched the messengers. She knew that the slipper was hers. With a hopeful smile, she approached the messengers and asked, "May I try on the slipper?" Her stepsisters scoffed, thinking it was impossible, but the head messenger agreed. To everyone's amazement, the glass slipper fit Cinderella's foot perfectly. Her stepsisters and stepmother were astonished. Just as they were about to leave with Cinderella, her fairy godmother appeared once again. With a wave of her wand, Cinderella's rags transformed into a beautiful gown, making her look even more enchanting. The messengers took Cinderella to the royal palace, where the prince was overjoyed to see her again. He knew she was the one he had been searching for, and he declared his love for her. Cinderella, too, confessed her feelings for the prince, and they decided to get married. Their wedding was a grand celebration, and even Cinderella's stepsisters were invited. Cinderella had a generous heart, and she forgave her stepsisters for their past unkindness. She hoped they would learn to be better people. And so, Cinderella, who had once lived a life of hardship and kindness, found her happily ever after with the prince, living in the royal palace and ruling the kingdom with love and grace.